Muted.
The current benefit plans and HR practices that you have in place. Where possible, we will note small employer references, and at times both Terry and I will also mention specific things that we see within the small businesses that we deal with across the PEO divisions to try to help set the stage. And certainly while we understand and we know very well that a small employer can't necessarily compete with large employer benefits, I think it's important to understand the competition as we're all fighting to keep our superstars, to make sure that all of us have as competitive practices as we can in place. And on the flip side, where we may not be competitive, we can help highlight some of the unique benefits that employees can take advantage of being in a small business setting. And I think there's a lot of really unique, rich experience that both individuals come and join in our organization and employees that are at our organization are able to benefit from. But we have to make sure that we craft that story and do a good job explaining what those things are as we're looking to recruit and retain our superstars. So this agenda, we're talking through benefits, we're going to talk through paid time off, talking about background checks, flex scheduling, and a lot of this will be in a very fast-paced. You will get copies of the slides at the end of the presentation, and hopefully this will give you some things to think about. As always, please feel free to contact your HR rep as you go through this presentation if you'd like additional information or you'd like to strategize about how you might change up some of the practices that you have in place that you think maybe you need to do to be more competitive. So I think the first statistic that probably all of us know is just the importance of benefits. So 93% of employees say medical benefits were somewhat to very important to their overall job satisfaction. More than 36% of employers have indicated that their organizations have had difficulty retaining employees. That's employees at all levels of the organizations in the last 12 months. And our benefits and our HR practices certainly are a big part, a big component of how we can remain competitive and keep those employees. 33% of employers say they're trying to leverage their benefits program in order to retain the existing employees that they have. And again, that's at all levels of the organization, from entry level all the way up to senior executive management level. And I think, again, small employers have to understand the variations between both large employers and small employers so they can tailor a competitive package and they can explain the great benefits that people get in a small company, which may be a little different than somebody in a huge corporation. One of the more recent statistics, Bureau of Labor Standards in 2014 states that 31.6% of the employee's compensation is accounted for by benefits. And so certainly the benefits that people have, that's an important part, and it's a very expensive part, as we all know, of the benefit package. So let's talk a little bit about employer-sponsored coverage. So right now, we've got 50% of small firms, and these are firms 3 to 199, offer health benefits to their workers. It's about 98% of large employers that are offering benefits to workers, and obviously that would make sense to you if you think about healthcare reform and the changes that have happened over the last couple of years. 85% of firms offering health benefits in 2014 only offer one type of health plan. So they may only offer a high deductible plan, or they may only offer one PPO plan, and that's the one plan that's available to all of the employees. Some of these averages, again, all the references are cited, and some are cited at the end of the presentation too, but the average annual single premium, and again, this is a national statistic, is $62.51 for the year, which is $520 a month for employee-only coverage. That's an average. The average annual family premium is $17,545, which on a monthly basis is $1,462. So those are our standards, those are our averages. let's kind of drill down again here. This talks a little bit about the percentage of firms that are offering benefits. So you can see clearly here, as the company is larger, you see more offering of benefit plans, and I think that probably is common sense. A lot of conversation during the healthcare reform was, were the smaller employers, the 50 and under, were they going to drop health benefits because of the increasing cost? And statistics play out that that's not really what we're seeing. We're still seeing a good amount of employers under 50 that are offering benefit plans to their employees, even though individuals have coverage available to them through the exchange. So in terms of medical increases, last year, 77% of employers saw an increase in healthcare costs. 25% of those state that their increase was 16+%. 7% of smaller firms are reporting that they're likely to very likely consider terminating their health benefits based on cost. And I think what is true is that for small employers under 50, because of some of the requirements in the health plan offerings that had to be made in compliance with the ACA, some of us probably saw even larger increases over the last year, maybe even than the national statistics would play out. So the types of plans that companies offer, 52% of companies offer PPO plans, 14% of HMO. HMOs tend to be very regional specific. High deductible plans, 24% of companies are offering high deductible plans, and about 10% offering point of service plans. By and large, again, what we continue to see through our book of business is small employers continue to offer high deductible plans. PPO plans, just for the sheer cost, tend to be more popular among larger firms, but the statistics here says, by 2017, 66% of large employers expect to offer a high deductible health plan. So let's talk a little bit about what employees pay in terms of health coverage. So statistically, employees are paying about 18% of the cost for single coverage and about 29% for family coverage. And that's a national statistic, and this is where one of the very big differences I think you'll see between large employers and small employers. Employees at small firms tend to pay slightly less for single coverage, 15% versus 18%, but they pay more for family coverage. They pay more like 41% versus 29%. 45% of small employers have a strategy where they pay X dollars towards the employee-only coverage, and if an employee wants to add dependent coverage, they pick up that additional cost. And by and large, that's probably the most common thing that we see among all the PEO clients that we're dealing with in terms of their strategy. If you're looking at just a true dollar cost, the average employee cost for PPO coverage is $95 a month, $434 a month for family coverage. That's the employee cost, what is being deducted from their paycheck. In high deductible plans, which typically are cheaper than PPO plans, you're looking at about $72 a month that the employee pays towards employee-only coverage versus $326 for family coverage. Most companies have a 4-tier rate structure. They have an employee-only, an employee plus children, employee spouse, and family coverage. That's the most common type of structure. There has been a more recent conversation where, and this is a part of, to try to create affordability for some of the ACA requirements, some large employers started looking at changing their cost sharing to be a percentage based on the employee's salary. And so you've got now about 14% of employers that are now using that type of approach. So as someone's compensation is higher, their contribution is greater than someone at a lower contribution. I don't see that in any of the small businesses that we deal with, but it is something that you should be aware of, and maybe something that becomes more common as employers try to deal with the rising cost of health care. One thing that is interesting, and this is right now predominantly in the large employer setting, you're seeing spousal surcharges. And a spousal surcharge, that's a charge, an additional charge that gets added to an employee if the employee has a spouse that's working and has coverage available to them, but they still join the employee plan. And the average tends to be about $100 a month of a surcharge that the employee has to pay if they want to add their spouse onto the plan. And 29% of companies now are stating that they're considering adding this type of surcharge. And again, that's just trying to probably parcel off some of the dependent claims costs that you may have. And so again, I don't see this in the small employer setting, but it is something that's becoming more common in the large employer setting. So let's talk a little bit about the PPO deductible. So on average, with workers that are in a PPO plan, the average deductible for employee-only coverage is $1,300. 61% of covered workers in small firms have a deductible of at least $1,800. And so I think one of the big differences that you see in terms of small and large employers, if they're offering a PPO plan, is you certainly in a small employer are seeing a larger deductible for a PPO plan. Now again, as I talked about, for the high deductible health plans are certainly becoming a lot more popular. They've been more cost effective for most employers. The national annual high deductible health plan deductible amount is $2,215 for employee only coverage. Again, that's slightly higher for employees in small firms where it's $2,700 and $4,500 for family coverage. So you can see here are some very distinct differences in terms of averages with high deductible health plans. Let's talk a little bit about copays, because in terms of cost management, a lot of how employers have tried to offset the significant increases that we've all been experiencing over the last number of years, people look to increasing copays, increasing contributions, office visits, and coinsurance to help reduce the cost of insurance. And so right now, what you're seeing is the average office visit for a primary care visit, this is under a PPO plan, is $24, $37 for specialty care. What you see is nearly half employers have an office copay, an office visit copay of at least $35. The average coinsurance right now, and this is coinsurance for in-network, is 20%. And that's still what we see the most common coinsurance in most of the plans. What we are seeing is a lot more plans increasing the out-of-network coinsurance if the employee chooses to go out of the network. We're also seeing networks in some situations with some carriers trying to drive to a skinnier, a thinner network, again, just to help reduce the overall cost for insurance. Out-of-pocket maximums, which is the maximum the employee pays each year after they've hit their deductible and paid all their coinsurance amounts, those amounts have increased 30% over the last 3 years. And so, again, as not only costs have increased for the insurance, what the employee who has insurance is paying certainly is increasing as well. And probably we all knew that already. Prescriptions certainly are a huge cost driver in all of our plans. One thing that's a newer change, and again, this is probably more common in a PPO setting, is to have, there's 40% of plans that are offering a front-end deductible for prescriptions. Versus just paying your copay when you go to the pharmacy. You got to incur $250 of a deductible before you make your copays. That's again something that we're seeing more in the large employer setting, not so much in small employers. Most employers, 81% of employees are covered on a plan that has at least 3 or more prescription tiers. And the averages for those tiers is Tier 1, $11, the Tier 2, $31, Tier 3 being a lot of your brand name drugs, $53, Tier 4 being some of your injectables, some of your specialty drugs being $93 that the employee pays when they go to the pharmacy to fill their script. There's a lot of things that people are doing to try to help regulate prescription drug costs on plans. And some of these are things that likely you maybe have experienced or maybe your employees will on plans. And sometimes they're an irritant. One being step therapy, where a doctor may have to try certain medications that are lower cost medications before immediately moving you to a brand name medication. That's a step therapy. Or maybe your plan has mandatory generics in there. And some plans are also having specific drug exclusions where, a family of drugs that covers a certain condition is covered, but perhaps 1 or 2 other drugs is not covered on your plan. We're going to continue to see a lot more attempts to try to manage that prescription cost. So who is covered? 62% of companies offer same-sex domestic partner coverage. I think a lot of our plans have already moved in that direction, but you're also seeing 39% of firms that are offering health benefits to unmarried opposite-sex partners, and that certainly has increased over the last couple of years. So who is eligible for benefits has changed a lot in a lot of our companies. Again, a lot of our companies have a high-deductible health plan in place, and so contributing to a health savings account sometimes is part of their strategy to reduce their overall cost. And right now, the national average is there's a contribution of $769 towards the employee's HSA for employee only, and $1,300 for family coverage. Most employers, if they're funding the HSA account, you got about 29% of them that are pre-funding, which means like at the beginning of the plan year, whatever the employer's contributing for the full year, they're making a one-time deposit into the employee account. And then another 32% are funding those pro rata. So over each pay period, they're funding the pro rata amount that they're making a contribution. We probably see, in terms of small employers, slightly less of an employer contribution. Sometimes we see this when a small employer had a PPO plan in place and now is migrating and moving to a high deductible health plan. An employer might make part of a contribution to an HSA to help employees make that transition. Flexible spending accounts continue to be popular. 37% of small employers are offering pre-tax premium contributions. 17% of small employers are offering flexible spending accounts. I think as a part of the PEO relationship, all of your employees have access to the flexible spending accounts, and so that certainly provides a competitive advantage to you. 69% of employers are offering dependent care on a pre-tax basis. Some of the participation in the flexible spending accounts, employers have dropped that as some of the limits have changed and been reduced over the last few years. So it's not been quite as popular as it has been a number of years ago. Probably a lot of conversation that you hear about is employers talking about wellness. What can we do to be proactive and preventive in terms of trying to manage on the front end some of our healthcare costs? So 81% of large employers and 40% of small employers are offering something to try to provide some incentive or some education about wellness. And you can kind of see the things that are listed here in terms of kind of strategies that employers are trying to use to see if they can't drive down some of the healthcare costs. 80% of them are providing resources and information, 61% providing on-site flu vaccinations, 51% providing a 24-hour nurse line, think a lot of you will continue to hear more about telemedicine, which seems to be the hot buzzword with health plans where, again, driving individuals from going to the emergency room, perhaps to telemedicine where certain less serious health conditions can be treated with a physician over the phone. Let's talk a little bit about dental and vision benefits. We still see a lot of companies, predominantly the majority of companies, offering dental coverage. 53% of companies are offering and contribute to a dental benefit. 87% of companies are offering vision coverage, and about 35% of those are covering or making some contribution towards the cost of employee coverage. On average, and again, this is a national average, on average, the employee pays about 51% of the cost of dental coverage. Probably in the clients in the small business setting that we see, by and large, dental often is it's a voluntary plan where the client is not making a contribution towards the dental or the vision coverage. So again, in the smaller employer setting, probably employers are making far less of a contribution towards those plans. About half of the plans that are offer orthodontia, and they only cover orthodontia for children, not for adults, which is obviously becoming a lot more popular. This screen kind of talks a little bit about, I'll just hit a couple things on here. The individual, the maximum plan design still tends to be that median around that $1,500 for the year. And so the individual deductible, typically if there is one, tends to be at $50. And you can see where some of the service levels are in terms of dental plans. What we see, and I think this is fairly true of what we see for life insurance, we still see that 83% of employers are offering life insurance. And that could be a basic $20,000 to a one-time salary to a two-time salary. We still see a lot of small employers paying for a $20,000 or a $25,000 policy for their full-time employees. Again, a national statistic is for long-term disability, about 80% of employers and about 69% of employers are doing short-term disability. Here again, there's probably, we probably see far less of smaller employers offering a long-term disability or short-term disability plan paid by the company. That statistic is probably about 20 to 25% of small employers. Where we do see, and what we'll talk about a little further, is employers offering voluntary benefits to help fill in the gaps for employer-sponsored plans. And here's a good example where if a company didn't have the money to offer a pay-for disability plan, they might offer through a voluntary plan individual disability plans, which are becoming a lot more popular. Accident plans, cancer illness plans. So again, the whole set of voluntary benefits continues to grow, and these are all voluntary benefits. Employers make no contribution. They're just available if the employee decides they want to pay for those. Kind of changing gears and moving to retirement plans. We see about 78% of companies that are offering a defined contribution plan. Predominantly, we see those as 401k plans. We continue to see more employers offering the Roth, which is the after-tax contribution to the 401k plan. That continues to be, more and more employers are adding that. 73% of companies offer an employer match, and 59% of companies offering a plan offer investment advice and retirement preparation advice. And this is probably one of the more growing areas where companies are trying to make sure that their employees that have 401k understand the plans and the investment funds that they have and understand what they need to be doing now to prepare for retirement later on. And so those tend to be newer benefits that really people are trying to maximize the education component of retirement plans. And as we see, the smaller the company, the less likely you are to see an employer match being in place. just for some comparison, and these aren't scientific, but looking at our groups, I think predominantly what you can see is, around 30% between the 3 divisions of our clients offer a 401k plan, and anywhere from 51 to 62% of those employers in those plans have some type of employer match. And that maybe helps you, again, sort of get a gauge of how important maybe a retirement plan may be as a part of your package for retention and recruitment purposes. That average employer contribution match is 2.7%. 43% of employees say the reason they participate in the 401k is that there is an employer match. And on average, in 2015, employees had an average that contributed about 5% of their gross pay. That 2.7% was a 2014 number. I think most of us are seeing 401k contributions increasing, especially over the last few months. So again, what are some other benefits that help kind of round out the plan? Well, these are some things that you might consider. Some are offering community volunteer programs, non-cash performance awards, giving away free tickets, giving away gift cards, discounted movie tickets, offering employees pay cards, providing legal assistance and services. So these are some of the additional benefits that that we need to make sure that employees understand they're part of our overall package. They're part of the expense that we incur with having employees, and we need to highlight that and educate employees so they understand all the real benefits that they're getting. So we're going to change gears now, and we're going to move in talking about some of the HR practices that we have in place. And so, Terry, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay, hang on one second. We'll be... Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead, while we're talking here, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the presentation. Hopefully we can get Terry pulled back in. But in terms of vacation time, what we see is 41% of companies offer a traditional vacation plan. 52% of companies offer a paid time off, a PTO plan. And a PTO plan by design is essentially offering, if you have personal days, sick days, vacation days, all rolled into one time off plan. 40% of companies, basically, they use a per pay period accrual versus a one-time allotment. So whatever your vacation or PTO may be available to you for the year, instead of getting a one-time allotment on the upfront, you're given, you'll receive a pro rata amount each pay period. 61% of companies are offering, allow some type of rollover to the following year. Often what we see is that rollover has limits. So again, the intention is to try to make sure the employees are using some of their vacation time, but allowing some rollover into the following year. Typically, PTO, again, that includes, all the paid time off in one plan. Typically, it doesn't include holidays. Those are usually tracked separately. We continue to see more people looking at a paid time off plan, and there are certain industries where that tends to be more common. We see that often in medical services or maybe even some professional services types of industries. It's less common in small companies, although again, we often are discussing with clients the benefit of a PTO versus a vacation and sick type of traditional type of plan. Typically what happens, PTO accrual amounts, they continue to increase with your tenure. So again, with a PTO plan, the average for PTO, and again, this is going to be PTO, that's going to include your sick and vacation time, that's 14 days a year. and that kind of migrates, over a period of time up to a maximum of 20 days or more per year once someone's tenure has increased. 16% of employers provide some sort of PTO cash-out option. 12% offer some type of donation program. Again, we have conversations with clients about that now, but I think we don't see that happen as much in smaller businesses. 2% of companies have unlimited PTO, where again, those amounts accrue and there's never any rollover or any loss of time. Terry, are you with me now?
I am.
Great.
Awesome. This is Terry Lanehart with Professional Staff Management, and I'm going to be shooting a lot of numbers at you on a variety of topics, and I'm going to start with that unlimited PTO. I know the first thing you want to know is who's hired. So it makes sense to me, though, that you still have to get the job done, so I don't know if that's such a great benefit or not. Bear with me. Okay, I apologize. Moving on to vacation. 46% of employers offer traditional vacation plans. The average is 11 days for an average with an employee for less than 1 year of service. If you look at all full-time employees, 86% of respondents offer between 6 and 20 days, and 40% offer between 11 and 15 days. 62% of those employers allow new hires to immediately accrue vacation time, but only 35% allow them to use it immediately. So generally that's due to an introductory period. 91% of employers pay some portion of unused vacation PTO time to termed employees, and 14% of employers allow employees to sell back unused time. Other statistics concerning vacation: 8% have a vacation cash-out option, 8% have a leave donation program, and 1% have unlimited paid vacation time. Interesting, it was 2% on PTO and 1% on unlimited vacation time. So when you're talking about vacation and PTO, accrual, negative balances, carryover, those terms are very important. For example, we discussed previously that some employers have a one-time allotment and others accrue vacation. So let's assume that you're accruing vacation on a prorated amount each pay period. Well, if you're going to do it that way, the employee will not actually accrue all their vacation time till the very last pay period of that period. Usually it's a year. So when are they going to take it? Some of the options that employers use to overcome this is, one, they allow them to accrue this year and take it next year, or they allow them to go into the negative, which causes other headaches, or they allow carryover. So that terminology there, those three issues are some of the challenges that you have to overcome when you're talking about vacation and PTO plans. When you're comparing and looking at PTO or vacation, a single PTO plan may be easier to administer. One reason is because a lot of employers are eliminating sick days. Employees tend to use sick days even if they're not actually sick. In fact, a lot of employers feel that having sick days is an incentive for employees to lie. Unused sick days and other non-vacation type pay is less often covered by state pay rules. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. But if it's included in your PTO plan, it's more likely to be subject to state termination pay rules. Here's a busy little slide here, and what this does is show you some averages based on less than 1 year of service to 20 or more years of service. And the first area is paid time off plans, and as you can see, the average is from 14 to 26 days from 1 year to more than 20 years of service. Paid vacation plan offers 8 days to 21 days. Paid sick plans run from 4 to 9, and paid personal plans run from 1 to 4. Again, you'll get copies of these slides if you want to compare this to your own. When you're talking about paid time off, especially PTO and vacation, it's very important to consider what happens if the employee turns. For example, if you have a one-time allotment and you give 2 weeks vacation in a year, and you allow that employee to take that full 2 weeks after 90 days, and then here comes the 4th month and they leave, what happens? Or vice versa, if you have allowed them to accrue vacation to be able to take it later on in the year, and then they leave, do you have to pay them for that unused vacation? And in general, you're not required to offer paid time off and vacation. However, in many court cases, the courts have actually ruled that there are vested benefits and must be paid if you do offer them. So you need to be very careful about checking your state law. Some states don't address it, period. They've left it up to the states or your policies. Several states require payout if policy and/or agreement stipulates that you have to pay it out. It's extremely important to know what your handbook states. What is your policy? Moving to sick leave, 42% of employers offer some paid sick leave. 84% don't pay for unused time upon termination. 58% allow rollover. The average number of sick days is 6 to 8 days a year. The average is 6 days for employers with less than 100 employees, and the average is 8 days for private employers of all sizes. Other paid leave, there's a lot of different kind of paid leave. 67% offer paid jury duty. Note, that's beyond what's required by law, if it is. 18% offer paid maternity leave. 27% offer paid leave for the following: family, military, that maternity should not be there, personal days, and volunteering. The smaller the business, the less likely this leave is to be offered, and that's common sense. Other paid leave, 20% or less offer paid time for each of a variety of other plans. And again, this is above what's required by law, specifically parental leave, adoption, paternity leave, elder care, sabbaticals, birthday. Moving to holidays, a very important issue. In 2016, 92 to 94% of U.S. organizations closed or will close on New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving. It's very interesting to me that only 80% will close on Christmas Day. I actually thought that would be vice versa, but it's not statistically. 98% offer paid holidays to full-time employees. The national average is 9 paid holidays. In 2015, 73% of organizations offered 6 to 10 paid holidays to full-time employees. 72% offered 6 to 10 paid holidays to part-time employees. There's a reference to floating holidays on this slide. The percentage is not there. It's actually 42%. It would be interesting to me if those were on a annual basis. For example, I'm going to offer a floating holiday this year, but it's not something I ordinarily do. Or every year I have a floating holiday. Bereavement. 89% of employers offer some paid bereavement leave. The average number of days is 3. Most employers include immediate family only, but often you'll have stepchildren and other family members included in the policy. And although they're not paid, most employers that we see will offer unpaid bereavement leave, and they're usually pretty open about it. Personal days, 27% offer paid personal days, and this is separate from vacation and PTO leave. The average number of days, if you offer personal days, is 3 days a year. Professional development. As I said, I'm going to throw a lot of topics at you and a lot of numbers. You've probably heard, or may very well have heard, of the cartoon where the executive says, what happens if we invest resources in them and they leave? And the other says, what happens if we do not invest resources and they stay? You got to get that happy mix. So in the personal development discussion, most employers, 50%, report that they have difficulty recruiting full-time regular employees. They cite a variety of reasons for that: lack of experience, lack of technical skills, and the obvious competition. So development programs are very important for recruiting and retention reasons. And a couple of the obvious reasons is, one, it demonstrates to the employee that the employer is interested in them. And obviously, the employer gains a better prepared workforce. The average training and develop expenditure for 2013 was $1,208 per employee per year. 78% pay certification fees. 75% pay license renewal fees. 85% have some sort of off-site professional development opportunities, and 90% pay for professional memberships. Another statistic which is not on here, which you ought to be interested in, is how many of those are required. In other words, if they're requiring them, are they paying them, or are they just paying them even though they're not required? 67% offer on-site professional development opportunities, and that tends to make you think that most people are not hiring full-time managers and they're using outside resources. 42% provide cross-training skills, not necessarily relating to the existing employee's job. There are other lesser utilized benefits, less than 15%, and they include career counseling, mentoring programs, college selection, and referral. Tuition reimbursement. This is a very important topic for a lot of people. According to SHRM Survey 2015, 56% of employers with more than 100 employees offer some paid tuition assistance benefit for undergraduate pursuits. The average educational reimbursement is $4,591 per employee per year. Many employers do tie a length of employment requirement in that in order to reimburse or not have to pay it back. Background checks. We conducted several webinars, and we conducted one in October of 2015 and discussed that 86% of companies perform criminal background checks. 47% of companies use credit checks for certain positions. 55% of companies perform pre-employment drug testing. Some more information about that. 47% of employers use motor vehicle records for applicable positions. 10% of pre-employment background checks return with a criminal conviction. Quite frankly, I see a little bit more of that in our PEO clients. 7% uncover misleading information. Drug testing, part of the background check. 73% of employers doing drug testing use urine-based tests. 22% use instant urine collection kits. 42% of employers that do drug testing also test for alcohol, and 7%, that's a whopping number to me, 7% test positive for drugs. When you're talking about vetting employees, background checks, that sort of thing, it's really hard to ignore social media. From a human resource stance to begin with, it's just really hard to ignore social media. 43% of organizations use social media or online search engines to screen candidates. Over 36% of organizations have disqualified a job candidate in the past year based on information found through social media or online search. Recruiting, the same thing. You just can't ignore social media. It's so prevalent. 84% of organizations are using it. 9% plan to use it. And some of the top reasons cited is, one, they want to find people to work for them that are not actively looking for a job. They want to increase their employer brand recognition, or they're looking to target specific skills. Top social media websites for recruiting include LinkedIn, highest utilization and rated most effective. Facebook, Twitter, used quite often but not highly related in relation to effectiveness, or professional or association sites. Talk briefly about salaries. Average salary increases for 2015, 2.9%. Average for 2016, 2.7%. General items, 60% of employers offer service anniversary rewards. 52% offer executive incentive plans. 49% offer to non-executive that are specifically tied to company or individual performance or defined goals. Recruiting managers, executives, 50% of companies are using recruitment agencies or consultants, particularly for management executive searches. 86% are checking references. 12% are using online assessments for executives and managers. Flexible work benefits, hot topic these days. 62% like their Blue Jean Fridays. 53% are offering telecommuting, becoming very popular. 61% have flex time in general. 56% offer unpaid time for volunteer work. 37% offer sabbaticals. 16 out of 17 companies report that flexible work arrangements were somewhat to very successful. 2/3 of the companies surveyed report sabbaticals were somewhat to very successful. I want to make sure I acknowledge these organizations where we obtained some of the information that we're utilizing in today's presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to David.
Thank you again to our presenters, Kim and Terry, today. For all of you listeners out there, thank you for attending our presentation, our webinar today. Please feel free to contact your HR representative to discuss any of the information you had here today. I do remind you that we will send out to all of our registrations today a copy of the slides. I'd like to remind all of you that our next upcoming webinar on FLSA changes and how that impacts your business. That next session for our webinar series will be on May 17th at 2 p.m. Central. Please look forward to seeing additional information in your email regarding that. Again, thank you all for attending today's webcast, and we look forward to hearing and seeing from you again in the near future. Enjoy the rest of your day. This concludes today's webinar.